Let me start by thanking you, Frank, for your very generous, all too generous citation. I can think of few Canadians who have brought such inspiring and decent leadership as you have to as many different institutions throughout your brilliant and remarkable career. It is a great honor, Frank, to have been your student, your colleague, and now, of course, your friend. I'm indeed thrilled today to be here. I want to thank Chancellor Wilson, President Gertler, Trinity College Provost Designate Moran, Interim Dean Brunet, and Dr. Stein. I also want to thank Justices Abella and Feldman, along with Chancellor Emeritus Jackman, President Emeritus Pritchard, and Mr. Laskin for being part of the ceremony today, and for the remarkable kindnesses you have shown Joanne and me over the many years. To share this platform with you today is a great honor indeed. Uncle Jack, it is wonderful to have you here with us today as well. Before I start my formal remarks, I just want to pick up on something that Mayor Moran said a few moments ago, and until she said it, the memory hadn't occurred to me, but she reminded me of being here at my first convocation ever as an undergraduate student in 1982, and sitting somewhere over there, D, closer to the front than over there where the Zeds are. And I remember the trepidation that I had before the graduation ceremony. And that was because I had a slight problem that I hadn't shared with my parents, who of course were so instrumental in getting me through undergraduate program. And that was that for some reason I decided to embark on an undergraduate thesis in my fourth year for Don DeWeese, who's a professor of economics who's sitting over there today. And there was a small matter of the library fines that I had accumulated in the pursuit of that undergraduate thesis. And I received letter after letter. There was no email, of course, in that time. Letter after letter from Robarts Library, increasingly becoming more shrill about what I was going to do about this library fine, which, needless to say, was not in double digits. It was in triple digits, which was a lot of money. And the correspondence, which was largely one way, continued for some months. And just before graduation, I got what was the ultimate letter from Robart saying, Mr. Daniels, if you don't pay your library fine, you are not going to graduate. I had absolutely no idea how I was going to break this to my parents, and I did what anyone would do in the circumstances. I just ignored it and hoped the whole thing will go away. I was counting on the bureaucracy of University of Toronto to stumble. And so, I'll tell you how the day went. They called me up, I shook the chancellor's hand, I went off the stage, so far so good. They called my name, I got up there. And I remember my folks sitting up there, and I had, about an hour before graduation, broken it to them. There could be an incident at my graduation this year. I don't want you to get too excited about it. I'll work it out over the summer, I'll get a job. But I might not be graduating today, Mom and Dad. Wasn't our best moment. But needless to say, they called me, I got up there, I shook the hands of the chancellor, I walked out with a sense of triumph. I even walked out, picked up the envelope with the degree, went back into the room, and I had felt great. I had triumphed over University of Toronto, and I was trying to think about that summer job and whether I really needed to pay this library fine. I don't know, it was a large group, about halfway, two-thirds of the way through the ceremony, I decided to take a look at the diploma. And, this is after I had waved it at my parents, showing the envelope. It was, you could feel the cardboard holding the diploma together. I waved to my parents, thumbs up, it's all good. I sat there about two-thirds of the way through, opened up the envelope, and there were clearly the two pieces of cardboard, and in it was like a fortune cookie message. Mr. Daniels, your library fines are still not paid. Until you do, there is no diploma. I learned a lot about the University of Toronto in that moment. A few months ago, in a thoughtful essay in the London Review of Books, James Wood explored the contradiction of living one's life abroad, how betwixt and between we expatriates are. We build good, sensible, and meaningful lives in our host countries, but the flicker of yearning for home never extinguishes. For me, home will always be Canada, will always be this great good place, the University of Toronto. It was here that my father, my aunt, and my uncle, as first-generation immigrants, laid claim to the bounty that was Canada by obtaining degrees from University College, pharmacy, and architecture, respectively. It was here that I met my wife and life partner, Joanne. It was here that I spent close to 3 decades of my life as a student, faculty member, and dean. It was here that I forged my deepest and closest friendships. It is good, really good to be home. But home, this home, is not simply a kaleidoscope of memories from the distant past. It is a vibrant, pulsing lodestar that continues to shape and enrich my life. There's scarcely a day that goes by that I don't summon some lesson, some conversation, some idea that I glean from my time here. To invoke Northrop Frye, this university is part of my educated imagination. And nowhere has the outsized impact of this university been more palpable than in sensitizing me to the monumental challenges facing the developing world. In 1981, I sat in Professor Jerry Helliner's undergraduate international economics class and gained my first exposure to global development. I can still vividly recall Jerry's withering critique of the impact of the international trading regime on the prospects of developing countries, how stacked the rules of many multilateral agreements were against the interests of the developing world. Later at law school, I came under the spell of a brilliant and engaging Kiwi law professor with mutton chop sideburns and a hyena-like laugh, who had just returned from a year of fieldwork exploring the prospects of property law reform in Papua New Guinea. Michael Trebilco was destined to become one of the world's leading and most influential experts on the complex interplay of law, institutions, and development. And our 30-year friendship stands as one of the greatest and most treasured gifts I've taken from this university. As a faculty member, I engaged in countless conversations, debates, and collaborations with Janice Stein, now the director and impresario extraordinaire of the Munk School, learning from her sustained, pragmatic, and principled engagement with the world. In the decades since I've left Canada, I have had the great privilege at both the University of Pennsylvania and at Johns Hopkins University of participating in extraordinary global partnerships with medical and educational institutions in Ethiopia, Botswana, Uganda, India, Myanmar, and so many other inspiring yet deeply challenged nations. These have led me through overcrowded corridors of health clinics where mothers hovered restlessly over children whose bodies had been ravaged by preventable disease, into classrooms where teachers and students somehow kept sharp focus on chalkboard equations despite swirls of teeming rain that entered through thatched roofs and paper-thin walls, into makeshift HIV testing and treatment centers that have given life and hope to thousands of people in the remotest regions of sub-Saharan Africa, and to meetings with courageous political leaders whose conscientious and stalwart resolve help upend authoritarian rule. And to each of these encounters, I carried an understanding shaped here at this university. We all know the statistics. More than a third of the world's population lives on less than $2 a day. 2/3 of child deaths are caused by preventable infectious disease. More than 780 million people lack access to clean water, and 57 million children are not attending primary school, more than half of those in sub-Saharan Africa. But we also know that these statistics do not fully capture what it means to live in a society where human potential is so tragically and wantedly squandered. Over the years, academics have offered a number of competing theories to explain why some countries succeed and others fail. Development failure was linked to too much state involvement and then to too little, to countries having too few natural resources and then to having too many, to being too open to international trade and investment and then to being too closed. And as each theory gained and then lost traction, developing countries were subject to wild policy gyrations that followed from radical implementation of these ideas. Although the terrain of development theory is still subject to debate, consensus has now emerged around the simple but profound idea that the quality of a country's institutions matters more than anything else in determining whether countries succeed or fail. The Nobel Prize-winning economist Douglas North famously described institutions as the rules of the game in a society. Institutions are the constraints we devise to structure our political, economic, and social interactions. They determine who among us holds and wields power and resources. The effects of well-designed and well-operated institutions can be seen in a burgeoning number of truly stellar development success stories: Taiwan, Singapore, South Korea, Botswana, and Chile, to name a few. And although success is not as well entrenched in China and India, hundreds of millions of people in those countries have, over the last decade, been lifted out of poverty as a consequence of good institutional reform. Sadly, however, the pace of development has not been evenly distributed. While some countries have lurched forward, others have stood still or declined. Some have advanced in the economic domain without progressing in civil or political liberties. And too often, violence, discord, and the specter of terrorism to continue to haunt countries in the midst of positive change. I dwell on these facts today because if institutions do really matter for development, then you, the law and global policy graduates of this university, have the potential to stand as important contributors to the enterprise of rectifying the wrenching disparities that mark our world. You understand the role of law and legal institutions in broad frame and the importance of a robust commitment to the rule of law and to democratic values. You are versed in theories of efficiency, feminism, corrective and distributive justice, and know the implications for policy. You know what separates weak from strong public institutions. You know how to design and enforce workable contracts. You appreciate the tension between accountability and independence in regulatory agencies. The list could go on and on. And then add to this training the ethos, the perspective, and the humanity of Canada. This is a country that has long struggled to find principled ways to guarantee widespread access to high-quality healthcare and education. With a population that is 1/5 foreign-born, it is a country that has integrated wave after wave of new Canadians without the rancor, the strife, and acrimony that has beset other societies. It is a country that is more open to most to ideas, immigrants, trade, and investment. This perspective gives you special purchase in the global debate on what it means to create and sustain a healthy, free, and prosperous society. So graduates, as you embark on careers in the profession, government, NGOs, or the corporate sector, we turn to you. I know that in those contexts you will sooner or later encounter the developing world. You may deliberately seek these opportunities or they may happen quite serendipitously. But when that happens, remember the lessons, the skills you have taken from this place. Remember that you represent the very best of a country that so often quietly and humbly represents the very best of the world. And remember how small acts of institution building possess the potential to contribute ways large and small to, in the memorable words of Amartya Sen, the enhancement of freedoms that allow people to lead the lives they have reason to live. Class of 2014, you are surrounded today by parents and partners, friends and faculty who celebrate and commend your remarkable achievements. I join this community in applauding not only what you have done, but whom you have become and what you can and will doubtless contribute to the world. Congratulations.